And marriage is the prime example of best friends with benefits, literally. You're welcome. And the other thing that I think is so cool that I heard somebody talk about with the image of how the woman is created from the man is literally like your rib is taken. And so it's like she's tucked in right next to your heart under your arm because your job is to be her protector, right? And so for those that don't know, Craig and I are a foot apart. So I can visualize that it's true. I fit right in there, just perfect next to you, right? And we were meant to be companions for each other, not separate.
Right, and I think that location is important as well because it's in the middle. It's not taken from high ground, and it's not taken from low ground. So we're equal, which is
One's
also a
not
biblical passage.
And one's not in front or behind the other either. We're essentially shoulder to shoulder or hip to hip.
Right.
Yeah.
Welcome to Live Your Life Out Loud podcast. I am your host, Stefanie Thayer. This is a place for tired and overwhelmed women to gather together. Whether you are seeking or already following God, I aim to bring hope, fulfillment, and purpose to your life. So let's dig in.
We have my favorite guest of all time. I happen to be married to him. His name is Craig. I'm super excited to have him here. We actually are in the same house, but across the house trying to record this. So welcome, honey.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
I'm honored to have you. So what are we going to talk about today?
I just felt this strong calling to speak about marriage. I've seen so many media posts, especially with certain generations, of not wanting to be married, not wanting to have kids, and I feel like there's a calling that we really need to speak about that. And I think you and I have a great relationship, and it's a great one to give to our kids as an example of how to be married and such. I mean, we're not perfect. I'm not saying that at all. It's the people who know me, that's for sure. But I just think that they're going to miss out if they don't listen to this podcast.
Okay, so let's start with, I'm going to quiz you. Do you know how long we've been married?
It's it's T plus 1, so it's true. It's age plus a year, so it'd be 18 years.
That's true. It'll be 19 this.
Yeah.
Won't it? Yeah, it'll be 19 this year. So we've been married a little bit of time, and you also have been married before, so
Correct.
you understand what it's like to go through divorce, which I think a lot of listeners will resonate with. So why don't you tell me what you think the importance of marriage is?
Well, I think the first would be, legal. So if you're with someone and then you have a child and you're not married, and then that other person, one of you is going to stay home to take care of the infant. And usually that's the female in the group, because they can nurse the child and guys can't unless you're a Fokker from the movie.
Meet the Fockers.
Anybody could. Yeah, anybody could. Anyway.
That's a bad joke.
That's a bad joke. Sorry. People would have to have seen the movie to understand that joke. But it's when that person then gives up what they were doing before. We have a purpose in life, not just to have kids and raise kids, but to also do something in life to help other people or our families and such. And you kind of lose that when you're at home. So you kind of get socially isolated. You don't work unless you can work from home, which is really hard to do with an infant. And as they get older and start to move. And if you're not legally married and the other one decides they don't want to be in a relationship and they leave, there's no alimony. So you've given up all that. And it's not easy to find a job the longer you've been out. it's you lose some social skills for a bit that you can regain as you start to talk to adults again. And then certain places don't want to hire you because you haven't been experienced for a period of time. So that's the legal. But I think the most important one is when you get married, and I would say marriage as two people together under God, so a Christian marriage for me and you, that when we have a higher power we can go to that helps guide our relationship, or being yoked, as it'll say in the Bible, that we walk together. We sometimes, if I'm in a valley of the shadow of death, I've dragged you with me in that, and I feel horrible about that. But when I've fallen, you can pick me up, and then when you've fallen, you can pick me up. So there's this kind of trinity between the two of us and God that is incredibly helpful. So I think that's the bigger importance by far than the legal one, that we've got this commonality in a Bible that gives us a way to approach life and its problems together.
So I want to read scripture, and I want to talk about it a little bit because it kind of goes along with this. Genesis 2:18. I'm just going to read it. The Lord God said, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper." And then it goes on to say how he formed the woman out of the man's ribs, and he closed up the man's ribs, and then the woman was made from that. So there's a few things in there that I love. This is the only time in scripture God says it's not good what he made. He made man, but he made him alone, and he realized we're not supposed to be alone. We are not meant to do life alone. We're not meant to be in isolation. So I know a lot of us have been home, or like you were saying, work from home now, or all these things. We're very connected with media and technology, but we're very disconnected in deep, authentic relationship. And marriage is the prime example of best friends with benefits, literally. You're welcome. And the other thing that I think is so cool that I heard somebody talk about with the image of how the woman is created from the man is literally like your rib is taken. And so it's like she's tucked in right next to your heart under your arm because your job is to be her protector, right? And so for those that don't know, Craig and I are a foot apart. So I can visualize that it's true. I fit right in there, just perfect next to you, right? And we were meant to be companions for each other, not separate.
Right, and I think that location is important as well because it's in the middle. It's not taken from high ground, and it's not taken from low ground. So we're equal, which is
One's
also
not
biblical passage.
And one's not in front or behind the other either. We're essentially
right.
shoulder to shoulder or hip to hip.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your ribs are important at protecting not just your lungs, but your heart.
Yeah, which is important.
Yes.
Tell me about what are benefits. Why do you like being married to me?
There's a ton of benefits. There's the male marriage effect. I think that's what it's called. But the benefit of being married, you live longer. And if we save for retirement, if I were separated from you financially, and we save for retirement together versus we combine our assets, there's a tenfold increase in wealth at the time of retirement.
Married men also make more money in their career.
Right. And it's funny because you can have a whole bunch of discussion about that, but I've always justified that somewhat by there being a social equalizer, meaning I do think, and we've taught our boys it's important for men to court women. We should treat, there's that passage about women should submit to their husbands. But there's a whole paragraph of what you're supposed to do as a husband to be able to deserve that, which is treat your wife as if she was Jesus's bride. So that's a big responsibility. So, and the reality is, when you're yoked, you're right next to each other. You're kind of stuck there all your life, being married and yoked, and you're going to discuss these things. So it's not like it's not going to be my choice alone to do these things. We're a team.
It's true. We are a team. There's a lot of data actually out right now on benefits of being married, and you hit on some of it. Before I go into that, I have a couple questions. Were you supportive of me when I worked?
Yes.
Were you supportive of me when I stayed home?
Yes, absolutely. I feel your pain because, our oldest, Chelsea, played volleyball, and her junior year, I think it was, played on a team in the Bay Area of California, and in Santa Clara specifically. And there was this two husband and wife Stanford graduates. His wife was also a Stanford grad, and I think she had a PhD, or at least a master's, because she had a mentor that, when she gave up what she'd studied and stopped working, that mentor wrote a scathing article about her giving up her feminine rights to work, and it was their choice, So
she said it was a waste of her education, that
right.
if a woman went to Stanford and decided to stay home as a mom, her education was now wasted.
Right. So I feel women naturally, both physically, physiologically, have a nurturing personality and being. I mean, I can't breastfeed. I can't have a child in me and give birth. I mean, that's a miracle.
It is the coolest experience.
I don't know if anybody has seen the light that's emitted when the sperm and egg unite. There's a flash of light. Let there be light.
Yeah.
Life is light. God is the light. I can go on a whole bunch of science about that, but just, you've been created to bring in a life, nurture it, keep it alive, and some of society supports that, and others say you're giving up your other gifts. But you give those gifts to your kids too. I mean, you teach them what your gifts are, and then they can see what you do.
I just wanted to ask you those because I think people they'll make some preconceived ideas of, we have very traditional roles, or we don't have traditional roles, and we've kind of done both. And this is not what the podcast is about, but I will just say, when I did decide to stay home, it was a very hard decision for me because there's such a conflict between being successful and having your own stuff and then being completely there for your kids and your family. But all 5 of our children, my husband, everyone did better when I was home. Everyone, hands down. And so I think I just wanted to talk about what the data says on marriage, and feel free to interrupt me, babe, but the data shows, and this was just published in January of 2024, married couples are significantly happier, much higher. They're more successful, which you kind of alluded to a little bit. They have better and more sex. So for all you, free sex folks.
That was on my list.
The one night stands are not doing it for you, trust me. Well-being, better well-being. We live longer, we're healthier, we're happier, we're more socially connected to others.
Suicide rates lower.
The highest.
That goes along with. Yeah.
Go ahead.
That goes along with depression and happiness. So.
The highest predictor of happiness is marriage over education, race, age, gender, or finance. So if you think about that, that's huge. If you want to be a happier person, get married. But don't just marry, anybody across the street. I mean, maybe your neighbor is the one, I don't know. But we talk to our kids, folks that we mentor, it is probably the most important decision you're going to make over where you go to school, where you work, where you live, because what you said before, my decisions affect you, your decisions affect me. There are struggles in life. There is no way to avoid that. And so if you have someone that's going to bind with you and walk that with you, it's a much easier process than if you're walking it alone.
Right. And in that light, it's really important to be on the same page, have the same belief systems, the same, kind of work ethics and those things. Because if you don't, if one of you is Christian, one of you is not, and even like Strobel's book, the Tribune reporter that tried to prove every way he could that Jesus didn't exist and that this is a fake, and his wife was getting deeper and deeper while she's pregnant into Christianity, and he feels like he's losing her. And he finally just has to become obedient and realize, I can't disprove this. I just can't. So, but that struggle of someone who's not a believer is just harder in a marriage. So, and it can pull it apart. And I would say that one thing I did mention is the privilege of raising children. I would say, if asked, my greatest accomplishment in life is fivefold. It's having 5 children. Mm-hmm. Just to see life begin and grow and just what they do. It's the driving down the street, and I would, like a Formula One car warming the tires, they zigzag back and forth. My oldest is in a truck behind me, and she starts to she's in front of me actually, starts to zigzag. So by action, you teach really more than by your saying. And just the glow you get and seeing your kids grow and do things, good jobs, and help.
So I want to back up. The story that you were telling is The Case for Christ. It's a book. It's also a movie. That's Lee Strobel. Very good. We have a very analytical child, and so we watched that with them because they want to prove the Bible, right? And so it's a really good thing if you have someone with that kind of a mindset. We've also had one of our kids ask, what if you really like someone that you're dating and they're not a believer? Is that a deal breaker? So we've talked to them about that too, that not necessarily. I mean, what if you really enjoy someone that has never been in church, has never known, they grew up in a home that was just faithless? That's very different than starting to date someone that is an atheist, adamantly opposed to God. The more time you spend with someone, the more you get connected to them. So the purpose of dating is to see if you want to marry someone. And if you should have, maybe we should tell our stories, you should have some non-negotiables. And if they don't fit those, it doesn't matter how hot they are, how fun they are, how amazing they are. You need to disconnect yourself, because the longer you spend, the poorer decisions you start making. That's just the reality, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, on medical mission trips, there were usually some young ladies on the trip, and my advice to them was, write 5 things about a guy you cannot bend, change. It's a must, right? And so, which is funny, because that's kind of how Steph and I got together, because I was playing water polo masters, and I had a team of high schoolers to 55 years of age. Maybe not quite that high, but
this is not how we kind of got together. This is how we got together.
This is how we got together. Yes.
Okay. Carry on.
And so I said, well, give me your 5, on your list. And she did. She actually cheated.
Hold on.
And one of those was, what?
All the ladies, I know you have a list of what you want. Do you only have 5 things on your list? Because when Craig's like, okay, give me your 5 top things you want in a guy, and then any non-negotiables, like if he's bald. Men, we don't care if you're bald, just so you know. If you're a great guy, you're good looking, we don't care if you have hair or not. It's not a disqualifier. And I remember telling you 5, my list's like 100. So that in of itself is a challenge, because I think a lot of women, we have this fanciful idea, right? And I don't even know if that person exists. And then if you even meet them with everything on paper, there may not even be chemistry, right? Okay, carry on. So what was on my list?
So one of those was spiritual. And
No,
so
number
that,
one. Number
yeah,
one.
yeah. Well, that prompted a phone call. And I said, do you mean like voodoo crap or
He actually said, do you mean weird voodoo SH?
voodoo? Yeah,
And
yeah.
I said, no, what I mean is that I am not interested in being with someone that doesn't have a relationship with God. There are a lot of people that say they're Christian and it's a check mark and it doesn't mean anything. Or they're a certain religion. I want to be with someone that has an active relationship with God. And that's what I mean by spiritual.
Hmm.
Was that it?
No, that you wanted someone who was intelligent. You wanted someone who was funny. Someone, yeah, that had a strong work ethic. And yeah, man, so I fired back again, phone call. So you mean someone who's witty? No, I mean someone who's funny. And they're two different things. I go, a really witty person plays with words, does puns. He's smart and he's funny.
No. Okay,
I think we
listen,
still argue that today.
you have not been on the same dating scene. There are some really intelligent people that are really dry. And then there are some funny people that are like, but they're not smart. And so, yes, witty. I should have used witty because it would have given me another one. My other two were active and likes to entertain. So I like smushed a bunch of things in there.
Yeah, cheater.
I cheated a little, but ladies, it worked. He slowly
Yes.
set himself up with me, and it was very sweet. But so that I think is a really important thing for both men and women. You need to have some non-negotiables, and it's not mean. You're doing a disservice continuing to date someone that you know is not the right fit for you. This person is going to be your ride or die. If you truly care about them and you know they're not right, you need to release them so that they can find someone else. And it's hard. It's hard now because a lot of people, I wanted to talk about this a little bit, commodity versus commitment. Society is saying, oh, did you lose me?
I did for a bit.
Okay. Society is saying just use people, like that their usefulness is for right now and then be out of here and go on to the next thing, right? And the Bible says otherwise. The Bible, I'm actually going to read it. Romans 12:10. Be devoted to one another. It says in brotherly love. Honor one another above yourself. So this isn't specific to marriage. This is about people in general, but you can apply it to marriage as well. Honor one another above yourself. So are you, that person that you're dating, that person that you're married to, are you thinking about them today, or are you thinking about yourself? And what I mean by that is we kind of have this running thing. What can you do one thing every day to show that person you love them? Because love is actually an action. It's not a word. I mean, people use it like it's a noun. It's a verb. It's an action. There are notes all over the house, little funny things about I love you. We make each other coffee. It doesn't have to be big. Sometimes it is big. Other times it's not. Craig ran off and got gas today, which that's not always something he does, but he knows I was busy, right? Like we just do little things to care about each other. And actually sometimes it's fun. You like hide paper plates in the spot in their bed and whatever. It's not expensive to love someone.
Acts of kindness.
Right.
Yeah,
Do you want to
key.
talk about commodity versus commitment and kind of our society and what's going on?
Yeah, commercialism is another term that's used. I mean, you see that in
Yeah.
churches. People go and they're not being fed anymore. So they want to go somewhere else, or they are looking for a church and they're looking for, usually it's the youth program or worship team, whether they're playing rock and roll music or contemporary Christian music or hymnals or the parking lot's too far. It's how crazy society's become, and losing the major point, which is just getting in the Word of God. And it's true with relationships. I mean, if there's no strong commitment, then it's easy when that particular person no longer fulfills your needs for you to start looking elsewhere. And, marriage and the Bible, and I have some quotes, outlines. It's a great book to kind of help guide your life. If you have a question about a topic, it's in there. It'll answer it.
Well, and this is the number one reason I tell everyone we talk to about marriage to find someone that's a believer. Because I know if they're a believer, even when they get off track, because guess what? We all mess up. They're going to come right back to this, the Bible. They're going to be looking to the Bible for their answers, for their friendships, for their guidance. And so no matter how far off track we get, and we all get off track, we'll come back because this is our moral compass. If you don't have that as a moral compass, what are you looking to? And by the way, the data on married couples and praying together, the divorce rate is almost zero. So even folks that are dating, I recommend, if you're really serious, if that's the path you want to be on, start praying together. There is something very powerful in bringing you to be together as a united front, right? And remember, dating is practice to see if you want to marry them, not actually practice. I mean, obviously we're not having sex and all of that, but you're seeing, could I do life with this person? That's the point of it. It's not to have 83 hookups. That is not the point of dating. And if you can't afford to take the girl on a date, you have no business dating her. We've talked to all of our kids about that. Don't be stealing holding a hand. Don't be stealing a kiss. Those are very intimate and significant things. And so if you don't have proper intention, you shouldn't be doing it. And I don't care if that means your kid needs to do some chores around the house so he can take the girl to the movies. Or if you're the girl, you're the parent of the girls. If that boy can't come take her on a date, he can't open the door for her, it should be a no.
Yeah, I mean, it's courting. God played a horrible trick on men, boys, males. He gives us this hormone called testosterone, and it's highest in our youth when we're not married, and it fades throughout our life. Muscle mass is decreasing and other things as well, but it's at that age, I feel sad for men that have done this, fooling women, making them believe that they were in love, and instead they were all about the flesh. And then when they got the flesh, they abandoned ship.
Well, and I'll also say that on the other side, society has really told girls that they should be having sex all the time and flaunting their sexuality. We were just at the beach. We got back from the beach last week, and there were girls that were legitimately almost naked in the bar. I mean, technically it's a bathing suit, but it was more like a string. I don't know what that's inviting.
I didn't see any of that.
Well, our sons did, and so did the girls we were with.
No.
Liar.
Yeah, I saw my nose grew.
I don't know how you don't see that, by the way.
You can, yeah. It walks by. It's like, yeah. And if they're not tan, it's white. So, yeah.
They were tan. How about? Oh, you said you had some quotes or scriptures. Did you want?
Yeah. It's just some scriptural quotes about marriage. The first one I came across was Isaiah 62:5. So, for a young man marries a young woman, so shall your sons marry you. And as the bridegroom rejoices over the bride, so shall your God rejoice over you. Mm-hmm. So God, there is a conundrum. I mean, there's some scripture that does say that we're better off not being married because the female body is a distraction to men and vice versa. But this is the way, because this next quote is very important because it's, like I said, it's such a strong temptation to males at an early age when we're not married. But in 1 Corinthians 7:2-5, but because of temptation to sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife, and each woman her own husband. The husband should give to his wife her conjugal rights, and likewise the wife to her husband. So basically, we should be submitting anytime our wife needs us sexually, and vice versa. For the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. Likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. Do not deprive one another, except perhaps by agreement for a limited time, that you may devote yourselves to prayer. But then come together again, so that Satan may not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. So we know if we're deprived, then a desire is a way that Satan acts on us and gets into our head and starts to make us sin. So if we're not getting something at home, then that's when men will start to look elsewhere. Same with women. And it doesn't have to be sexual. Sometimes it's ego. It's like, wanting to be desired. It's, it can be a lot of different things. But it becomes a temptation, and that temptation then eats away and can become a sin, a sexual immorality of adultery or other things.
Don't you think lust is the most dangerous or most common opening for men generally for sin?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
And so, what you alluded to is that you guys have such a physical drive, and you know what? You should tell the EPPP story in just a second. But I grew up in purity culture. You're a little bit older than me. I'm a little bit younger than you. And so a lot of us that grew up in church, it was like, don't have sex, don't have sex. And so there was a lot of mindset for me growing up of okay, sex isn't good. That is not true at all. And it literally says in the scripture that you just read, 1 Corinthians, you should be having sex. You should be sharing with each other. You should not be using it as a commodity. So obviously, actually tell the EPPP and then I'll say my next part.
Sure. So the Masters Water Polo group that I would hang out, we would have all sorts of subjects that we discuss after practice at a Irish pub over a large bowl or plate of cheese French fries with it was so. But one of those was kind of the differences between men and women, and so women want what I call emotional penetration. So they want to bond with us emotionally, and less so men. And that takes a while, unless you have PP, which is penile penetration. So that with men is not as bonding emotionally. For women, if they've had sex with a guy, they're completely bound to that man. I think it may not be as much as before, but I think because of cultural changes that have occurred since the 60s with the hippie and free love stuff, but I still think there's an element, even in that generation, that when they've been that close and that bound to someone, personal, and that's the most personal thing you can do with someone, that there's a bond there that they don't forget.
Okay, so men, the PP is not that necessarily a big thing, like the penile penetration. And the emotional penetration, then they're more hooked, right? Where if the girls have PP, then the EP is really strong. And of course, it's how God wired us. We're very different to complement each other. And so what I see sometimes in marriage too is that women are holding sex hostage over their husbands. And it says clearly, we're not to do that, right? We're supposed to take care of each other. And so I think part of that is why you see even the data saying it's better, because you're married for a while. You get to know each other, right? You know the things that you like. And it is the most you can ever offer someone. There is nothing greater you can offer someone, which is why it is such a special thing. And it's a really important thing in marriage. And it's also the differentiator between just being a best friend, let's say, right? It's a best friend with benefits.
Right. Right.
What a deal.
Yes. But again, you really take it to a higher level when you can share that in marriage. And yeah, it's just, it has so much more meaning.
Also, I do think that there's times it keeps you together because it is that connection. You go through really hard, life is hard, you guys. There's no guarantees that there's an easy path. You don't marry someone and be like, oh, easy road. Whether you get married or not, you're going to have bumps, right? And so that is that ultimate binder. And maybe that is the thing that carries you through for a while. Also, I know people who have not been married, who have been having what they would consider great sex, and they stay with that person much longer than they ever should because they've now created, it's called a soul tie, and it's hard to disconnect it. You can pray that off. Look up soul tie prayer deliverance. That's another topic, but.
Yeah, but I found other ones. There's Matthew 19, 4-6.
I
So
got
Jesus, Jesus
Yeah.
is talking, and he says, haven't you read the scriptures? They record that from the beginning, God made them male and female. And he said, this explains why a man leaves his father and mother and is joined to his wife. And the two are united into one. Let no one split apart what God has joined together. That's probably one of the most common, whether they're, a priest or a pastor, marriage thing that's spoken. 1 Peter 3:7. In the same way, your husband must give honor to your wives. Treat your wife with understanding, and as you live together, she may be weaker than you are, but she is your equal partner in God's gift of new life. In Hebrews 13:4.
Wait. Can we stop?
Yeah.
I want to back up to the first one. I have comments for both. Okay, so Matthew 19, 4-6. I think this is really important for us to talk about. Will you talk about God's proper hierarchy? Like, what is the order of priorities in your life? What should they be?
Yeah, so for me, it's frequently when I'm asked to speak, I'll introduce myself and I'll begin with that priority. I'll say, I'm a child of God. I won't add to that I've been created in his image, which is perfect, just like women. You guys are perfect, and men admire everything about you. So, and then the second is, I'm a husband to my wife, Stefanie. And the third is, I'm a father to my children. And the fourth then can vary, but it could be church, it could be what you do. And since it's usually a motivational speech, I'll give some background of, I've been blessed to be a general surgeon that does trauma, vascular, thoracic, oncologic, pediatric, robotic surgery. That I've been a trauma medical director and a chief of staff and led many different ways. And that I recently was able to publish a book and go on from there. So that's the priority that I use in life is God first, and then wife, kids.
So that is scriptural. And this text will really irritate a lot of parents or in-laws. And I just want to take a pause here and remind you of that. If you are married, you have committed to your spouse above what your mom or dad wants. That doesn't mean there needs to be a competition or a fight, but it's God and then your spouse. So there may be some new Christmas things that happen. There may be a no to the Sunday afternoon barbecue, whatever. I love having my kids around. I hope they're around as much as they can when they're married. But I am not the priority anymore. I am their mom. They have left the home and taken their spouse, and now the priority is their home. We've told our adult children this. It's really, really important. And so if your parents are asking you to do something that's opposed to your spouse and your marriage, that's a problem. And that's not biblical.
Right. And there are matriarchal and patriarchal cultures. One of those is Indian. The married couple is expected to move into mom's house, mom and dad's house, and then give birth and then be helped with grandma. So this generation does not want that. They want to be on their own. So that's a fight that you may have culturally.
Well, and I don't care about this generation. I care what the Bible says. And the Bible says that's not what you do. Now, could you live intergenerationally and have multiple generations in your house? Absolutely. If that works for you guys, if everybody is on the same page, that can be a really beautiful thing. My dad actually had that with his parents and his grandparents. They're German. There's a lot of really cool situations. There's also a lot of really toxic situations, right? Also, these are important things while you're dating. If you're dating someone that does not have a backbone when it comes to their parents, that may be something that you want to look at, because it has to be more than they're just cute and fun to marry someone, right? There's a lot more. Okay, I want to touch again now on, you read 1 Peter 3:7, and you said we're equal, but we're different. I think that's so important to highlight, that we both bring really beautiful, really different things to the table, and they're both necessary in our marriage, in our home, with how we raise our children, with our community. They're very, very different, but they complement each other, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, thank God that we're different, right? I mean, imagine if we were all just the Clone Wars from Star Wars, right?
Have you ever heard, there's this quote that's like, you're attracted to the person because they're so different than you. And then way down the road, you're irritated because they're so different than you. Like when we're having an argument, why can't you just think like me? Oh, right. And I do think I think God has a serious sense of humor. And he's like, oh, you're not good with this? I'm just going to give your spouse that thing and we're going to teach you. Thanks, God.
Yeah, or the things you fell in love with are the things that you become irritated about later on. So, yeah.
Yes, it's life. Okay, go to the next one you wanted to go to. Thanks for letting me interrupt.
Sure. So Hebrews 13:4, let marriage be held in honor among all, and let the marriage bed be undefiled, for God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterous. So just again, it supports the one I read earlier. Don't let desires go unsatisfied, where temptation can enter, and then God does not like a bed that's defiled. So
I think this is also a key to a successful marriage is, I'll do the visual for people that are watching, but for those of you that aren't. So we're two independent people, although we are trying to walk a similar path, right? If we move 1 degree away from each other, over the years, all of a sudden, we're very far apart. If we move 1 degree closer together, we are much closer together, right? And so we have growth and challenges individually and as a married couple, but continuing to kind of walk that journey together. And that doesn't mean that every hobby has to be the same. You need your own friends, you need your own things, but you also need to be doing things together and to have an awareness that you're sort of not outpacing the other one, because that's when it becomes dangerous and you get more disconnected, right? And so if you're disconnected, you're going to see that in the bedroom. You just are.
Yep, totally true. Next is Ecclesiastes 4:9-10. 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one can lift up his fellow, or the other. It's another way of interpreting that. And that goes with being yoked. I don't know if people have heard this, but a yoke in old school is what used to be put around the necks of 2 oxen. And the oxen would pull a cart or a plow or something heavy. And if you just use one oxen, they could pull about 5,000 pounds. If you use two, they could pull about 15,000. So it's a little more than twice what you'd think. And then if they were yoked, meaning they had this thing around both their necks, it was made of wood, they could pull 25,000. And if they were trained to be yoked, they could pull 50,000 pounds. So it's amazing what being yoked can really physically do, along mentally.
Right. It's significant. And that's why it says, look for someone that's equally yoked to you. You have to train together to get to that level, but it's also a warning to not be with someone to not be with someone that has a different faith than you. And there's actually warnings about that all through Scripture, of not to intermarry with a different faith. And that's not to be disrespectful. We can love people of other faiths, but you are setting yourself up for huge heartache, especially if you want children. It is extremely confusing to children when there are parents that, and I mean, Craig and I are going to disagree on different theological things, but our salvation issues, we are in agreement on. And it is very confusing to the child. And what generally happens is they become completely opposed to any faith. And so it's a huge disservice. And I have not seen any of my friends who have chosen to marry someone that was a different faith of them has really had a hard time. It has not been a road that they would recommend. Now, if you are already married to someone and you are not equally yoked, there's lots of Scripture about you carry that. You may need to be the spiritual leader of the household, which generally falls to the husband. But if he is not, then it is your duty. You are not to divorce him because of that. There are all kinds of other things. So if you're already in that situation, that's not like a run away from it. It's you're going to deal with what is, right? And you are going to fill the gaps that need to be filled.
Right. And what happens, which is kind of what's occurring in today's society, is you go with that child that was confused, didn't know what to believe, now raising children not in faith. So now there's a whole new generation that's brought up without knowing even about Christianity. And then that propagates itself. So if you're a listener that wasn't raised with faith or know about Christianity, then, or an interesting thing that we just saw recently was this messianic, meaning he believes in Jesus, not just as a prophet, but a Messiah, and is Jewish, messianic Jew, was going around interviewing rabbis, and they've taken a chapter out of the book of Isaiah. It's 54 that talks about the servant, which is, it's the Old Testament before Jesus was on the earth, that they've just eliminated. Honey. Yeah, 53. Oh. It starts with 53 mentioning the servant, and then I think.
Yeah, it's 53 because the prediction of Christ.
Yeah.
53:10.
It just talks about who Jesus was going to be. It was a prediction of prophecy of what Jesus was going to do, and that's not in their book.
So you are a dad of 2 girls and 3 boys.
Yes.
Do you think that someone should approach you for permission to date your daughters?
I think that's customary. Well, to date or marry?
Well, that was my next question.
Yeah. I do, and I've done that.
To marry, you would like to marry, you think that's okay. And so if you are a what advice would you give to the young ladies and the young men about courting? What would you say? And I've heard you say it to our kids, but give us some dad advice.
I think it's I started to say it earlier. I think it's the financial social adjustment. If men make more, they're going to hopefully spend it on courting the ladies. So it's kind of payback indirectly. So it's a financial equalizer, is like the term I've used in the past. So even though you guys are paid less, which is fair.
Not much.
Not much.
It's
Yeah, it's
changing.
coming up. But it was a lot different, and you guys didn't even have rights to vote for a while, which is crazy. So
Okay, hold on. Let's say she
anyway,
makes more than him. Should he still pay?
yeah, yeah,
Okay, thank you. Carry on.
yeah, yeah. No, I think it's just honoring women. They're I went through a divorce, and Steph was there to watch this
Hold, hold on.
long. Yeah,
We met 2 years after the divorce had been filed. That
right.
came out poorly.
Yeah,
I
but
watched the
a
aftermath.
happy mom, still respecting your children's mom, is very important.
Huge.
Yeah, happy moms, happy kids. And
Yes.
so, any way you can do that through a divorce is key.
Mhm.
That said, that's my advice to my kids: is that you treat women with respect, never strike a woman. Um, open the door, be a gentleman, be chivalrous, protect, sit and watch the room, pay attention to who's in the room, who may be a danger to your family, your wife. I think those are important things to do as a man.
What about for the girls, for your daughters? What's your advice?
Understand that we're men. That we kind of arrest our development at the age of 12, and so
True.
understand that. Thanks for agreeing.
You're welcome. Well, you're only responsible where you have to be, and then you're pretty much 12.
Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, I'm 12. So yeah, then there are probably moments in the war where I may be asking someone to pull up for who's assisting or in the room, something on YouTube, like Evan Costello's Who's on First, because the younger generation hasn't seen that comedic thing. So, but yeah, I think that just understanding men and that we're trying to provide for you. My dad said, "You'll notice, son, that women are about the house and men are about the world." And so I think we need to understand that, so that that women want to be protected and know that they're comfortable and safe, and men want to provide. So if we're not providing, we've been laid off, or we're stupid and we're just sitting around playing video games and not providing, then yeah, we need a kick. But um, the more that's a tough spot. The more that it's rubbed in our nose, the worse we feel. The worse we feel, it's kind of that spiral downwards, right? So we need to get out of that. We need to get out of the house. We need to find a job. We need to be out there for a purpose.
Okay, I'm going to do the lady advice because you still circled mostly back to guys, which is fine because you're a
Right.
guy. Okay, ladies, when a guy shows you who he is, believe him. You're dating to see the character of that person. Can you stand the way they chew their food? Whatever. There's lots of things that are good and bad.
That you reminded me of one.
Hold on, he is never going to treat you better than how he's treating you in the dating process. So if you've been dating 2 months and you have concerns or he's bailed on you, he's showing you who he is. Cut it off. Cut it off, okay? How he treats his mom, it's a pretty good indication of how he's going to treat you. You are the gatekeeper for the speed of the relationship, especially sexually. So be clear on where you're at, where you're not at. A guy that's not willing to stay with you because you aren't going to give it up, he's not the right guy for you anyway. And secret tip, ladies, if he really likes you, he's actually going to respect you so much more for that. Because if a guy wants to have sex, he can. It's pretty readily available these days. And he will not treat her in the same way because she does not treat herself in that same way, right? So not in a mean way, but you're not a commodity. Remember, we talked about that. And, there might be a young man that wasn't raised with certain things of like what to do. One of my favorite dates is a picnic. What we have told our kids is a great first date is going to a coffee shop. If it's horrible, you did like 20 minutes, you hung out. If it's great, you could be there for 5 hours. You could ask them if they want to go for a walk. You're seeing if there's any potential with this person, right? I personally think if you cannot date in high school, I think it's better because it's hard. You're dealing with a lot of mature issues and there's so much pressure on these high schoolers and the things they're trying to do and accomplish. But sometimes that's how it goes. And if you find your love, then fine. But if the guy is in his Bible, that tells you something. If he's willing to be in his Bible, he may not know about it at all. That tells you something about him. The boys generally that are the really popular, really jockey ones, you want to go find the ones in the science and engineering department that are really smart, that are really focused on their academics. I'm just telling you. And if a guy wants to be with you, it's going to be really clear. And ladies, don't play games. There's no like, oh, I'm not going to message him back for 3 days. I'm not going to, all that rule stuff. It's only good when you're playing a game. If you really like the person, all those rules are out the window because they're not annoying that they text you. Also, do not accept a date from someone that just texts you to ask you out. Gentlemen, it's scary. At a minimum, call her up. Ideally, do it face to face. I know it's scary. I'm sorry, you're the guys. We have other problems as girls. Did you have more that you thought of, honey?
No, yeah. So it's not just how they treat their mom, but it's also, if you're at a restaurant, how they treat the wait staff. How do they tip? How do they treat them? If they seem, disrespectful or curt and angry or even worse, then yeah, they're not. And I think depending upon age, I feel sorry for you ladies because the American Academy of Pediatrics said within the last couple of years that the male is still adolescent to the age of 24.
It's true.
It means they're still a kid till they're 24. So, I mean, we really, and I wasn't perfect at this. I think Steph helped lead me to be a better leader in the house. So, your kids look to dad as a leader and their mom. Moms will always nurture and lead. But I think that's the big difference where society has had a problem is not having dads in the house. They're the ones that are going to let their kids make mistakes, fall, be dangerous. And moms are going to say, you're going to lose an eye.
Be careful. Well, we should do a whole podcast about that too. And then I just want to say, since, I am a stepmom, you've been married before, that if you're in this situation, because it's very common that people have been divorced, it's sad, it's horrible, it's worse than a death because that person is still around. If you have children, it's even more complicated. So if you're dating someone that has children, how does he treat or she treat the children? Are they a priority? Are there fights over money? Are there fights over time? And I don't mean you can't control the ex, but you can control your behavior or the person that you're dating. They will never treat you better than they're treating their children, ever. That tells you everything you need to know about them. And if they're squabbling and complaining about alimony for the ex or whatever, that is a red flag because that's a situation that they created. I mean, not that I know you didn't want to be divorced, Craig, but it's an obligation that you have. And it's not that they can't complain. Divorce is really hard. You're a safe place for them. They don't have to think their ex is amazing. That's not what I'm saying. But there's honor and integrity in the actions and the behavior that you take. If you hear them bad-mouthing the parent to the kids, there are a lot of red flags here. They're never going to treat you better than they're treating the kids. I guess you did all right because I married you.
Yeah. Luckily, there were scary moments financially.
Oh yeah, I mean divorce is a horrible, horrible thing, but that's also
as long as you're in the courts, you're in an adversarial relationship because you're arguing about something if you're still in the courts, right? So, until that's finalized, it's an open wound. And once it's finalized, then the wound can heal.
I think there's another thing I want to say before we end this, because we do need to wrap it up, about if you're in a marriage and it's not in a good place, I want to challenge you on a couple things. If your spouse is willing to pray with you, and you may not know that, you may think that they're not, but you don't know if you don't ask them, and you make a commitment to pray together for 30 days, the other thing that you can do that's really valuable is show them that you love them for 30 days without any expectation back, without rolling your eyes, without whatever. Treat them how you would have when you were dating, not based on their behavior, based on your behavior. They're going to think you're crazy at first, and their behavior will change. Somebody has to be the change, and you might be the change. Fight for your marriage. Fight for your marriage. Read these scriptures that we talked about. Go to war. The best way you can go to war is in prayer.
Yeah, I think Francis Chan, who's a well-known pastor, said, when you start to feel lost or being misguided, go back to where you started. That's what you kind of just said. Just
right.
in a relationship, whether it's a relationship, a job, which, whatever got you where you are today, go back to the beginning of that. Find that beautiful love that you had, where you were away from your now wife, that you just wished that you were by her side so you could hear her breathe or talk or sleep or whatever she was doing at the time.
Okay, and then if you are married, go ask your person out on a date, seriously, and get dressed. Like, remember how fancy you'd get before? Keep dating your spouse. It matters.
And there's two datings. There's the one night date where you just go out and do something, but a weekend one every once in a while is important too.
Yeah, call grandma and grandpa, tell them you need them. Well, thanks for being on here.
Thank you.
I love you.
I love you back.
All righty.
I miss you already.
I hope that today's podcast was a blessing to you. We appreciate you over here at Live Your Life Out Loud. If you could go follow us, share this podcast, and give us a review, it would greatly help us get the word out. Have a wonderful week.